We welcome in TSN Hockey Insider, one half of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, Mr. Darren Dreger, to explain further. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I haven't shaved in a couple of days.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Well, you wear it better than I do. It takes me like a week to look like I haven't shaved. But it does this, we're getting to that window of where February 4th, the Olympic freeze isn't that far away. Mm-hmm. And, it normally does take one or two trades, and then the rest of the hockey world goes, okay, maybe we better get after it here. And, of course, it started with Vancouver and Minnesota with the Quinn Hughes trade. But the Rasmus Andersson trade is a big one as well. And teams are taking notice. And because of that, as we have this conversation on Monday morning, I do get the sense that there are some other trades that are down the path here. So it could be an interesting week.
And before we get to Kiefer Sherwood, and we think something's brewing there, and Jake DeBrusk, should ask you, Dregs, because the last couple of years, we've seen the holiday roster freeze work as kind of a mini deadline where GMs wanted to get some business done. Are you treating this February 4th Olympic roster deadline likewise? Like, do you think there's a lot of teams and GMs that want their business done by then?
Well, if not done, they're going to try as hard as they can to get it done. And I think that alleviates some of the pressure then when you come out of the Olympic break and you're looking at March 6th. What is that, 11, 12 days? Something like that. Now you've got an infinite period of time. And it sways heavily in the favor of the seller at that point. But guys, more and more now, we're looking around the league and we're seeing more sellers pop into the market. That's what we're seeing. Calgary gets the jump here. They move Rasmus Andersson, priority one. He was the first piece that was going to go that matters. Now we shift over and we look at Nazem Kadri, what might come there. Now I'm also looking at other teams. I'm looking at the St. Louis Blues. It sounds like Doug Armstrong super wants to be aggressive. And if you're anywhere over the age of 23 years of age, then I'm interested in moving that piece. Okay, well, now there's another team, right? So that kind of, it doesn't settle the market, it fuels it, because if you're a seller again, you're looking at it and going, okay, well, geez, I've had this many conversations on my player, but now there's another team. There's another two teams that have forwards that are in play. Maybe a defenseman that we didn't know was in play is now in play. And that just adds a little bit more complexity to what you're trying to do. So I do think it's going to be busy between now and the 4th.
Dregs, big trade. Kiefer Sherwood off to San Jose for a couple of second-round picks and a journeyman depth defenseman. What did you make of the deal? How'd it come together?
Well, I mean, for the Vancouver Canucks to close on this deal, even though, speculation was developing. My sources around the league, including San Jose and Vancouver, indicated that there was something in play. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a bit surprised that it happened as early as it did. I thought that it would drift into the later stages of the day or into Monday evening. But I think what changed it, I know what changed it, was that second pick. So the second round pick being included in the trade by the San Jose Sharks. That's what encouraged Patrick Allvin and Jimmy Rutherford to say, okay, you know what? Could we do better? Maybe, but probably not. So what are we waiting for? Let's just cut bait and move on. And as you said, Matt, they get a depth defenseman. I mean, this is a journeyman American Hockey League player. I mean, the book hasn't closed on Cole Clayton. He's a 25-year-old right shot. So there's opportunity at both levels, American League and at the NHL level, if given a chance. But obviously the Canucks management felt like it wasn't going to get any better. And they had already softened to a degree. I think initially when Kiefer Sherwood was put into play with the other pending unrestricted free agents and other players, the hope and expectation was that they might be able to lure a first-round draft pick out of someone. And there are going to be the naysayers out there, guys, around the NHL. In fact, I've already gotten a couple of texts from people that I trust inside the hockey world, not media, who say, I don't understand why they made this move this quickly. Maybe if you wait a little bit longer, then there is that deal. Okay, I appreciate that. But look, the Calgary Flames rolled the dice on Rasmus Andersson and playing him twice before trading him. I mean, stuff happens. Players get hurt all the time. Why risk that sort of thing if you're kind of on the fence here a little bit. So again, that second round draft pick is why the Vancouver Canucks just decided, all right, let's pull the trigger and get it done. It's probably not getting better.
He's a UFA. He's got no trade protection. Yeah. Is there lobbying from the player and the agent still, though, saying, can you make this deal sooner rather than later? Like, did that ultimately play out, do you think?
I don't think so. Like, there'd be discussion. I think that, Patrick Allvin has been very open with Judd Moldaver, the agent for Kiefer Sherwood. I think that it became pretty obvious in the not too distant history that, Vancouver wasn't going to extend him. And I mean, as soon as you start using words like rebuild, that you're pushing away from your unrestricted free agents. It's always better for the player. But look, again, Rutherford comes from the school, especially whereby he believes in the theory that if you can trade a player or acquire a player sooner rather than later, well in advance of the trade deadline, that benefits everybody. Because in this case, San Jose gets Kiefer Sherwood, and he's got time to acclimate to his surroundings. And, the coach in San Jose can move him throughout his lineup and see where is the best fit, which is often why when you get those rental pieces right at the trade deadline, they don't often work out. They don't. There have been a number who have, but normally they don't. So I think this is more about San Jose taking advantage of a player that they believe isn't just in a career year, that he's a decent player who's going to build on what they already have there. And I'd be surprised if the San Jose Sharks don't try pretty hard to extend Kiefer Sherwood. They've got the cap space. They obviously have the want for what he brings, and it makes sense to get the early look, get him to fit in, and then the money and the negotiating with Judd Moldaver kind of looks after itself down the road.
And the market speaks for itself too. It's a decent hockey market with a great place to live. Everybody raves about it. So yeah, you're right. They might have had that confidence going into it as well. The 2 second-rounders instead of a first, how big of a downgrade is that? It's obviously a downgrade, but you get 2 looks at 2 different drafts, and that's the other thing. They wanted to flood this year's draft, and that's fine. Yeah. That's a fun thing to do, but you want to have your ass covered a little bit on the next year's draft too, depending on how that builds and how deep that ultimately that becomes. So will we start to see them populate the 2027 draft now as we get closer to the deadline, do you think?
You could, but when you're acquiring draft picks, they can turn into prospects, right? And young NHL players too. You're not going to draft all the picks, or if you do draft the picks that you have, when you're accumulating draft picks, you're never going to be able to sign all of those players. So for a team that's headed into the rebuild, sure, that's currency, but it's currency in different forms. So I think in saying that, there's value. And that second round pick in 2026 this summer, that's going to be a decent pick because, as we know, the 26th draft is believed to be pretty deep. It's certainly deep, and there'll be some jostling back and forth in the top 5, certainly in the top 3 of the draft. But the deeper you go into the first round, those are quality players. And then that doesn't change a whole lot getting into the second round. So I think in that respect, the Vancouver Canucks have done well. But you're always trying to add to your cupboard when you're looking at first clearly, but then seconds and even thirds, because you can use those to turn into bigger deals down the road.
Let's move on to the rest of the roster because everyone is for sale, as we know, here on the Vancouver Canucks. And let's maybe just throw out one name off the list. And I think for me, Elias Pettersson and Filip Hronek are the least likely to be traded just because of their utility and the fact they both seem like they want to stay here. Alan Walsh tweeting out on Twitter, this is just wasted air to talk about it. Great players are in demand everywhere, but the NHL is not fantasy hockey. Why bring up players that are not available for trade? Vancouver management and coaches are happy with Phil, and Phil has no interest in going anywhere else. Is that, Darren? Should we just throw away the Hronek possibility here?
Well, I can't throw it away, but I do. Look, Alan Walsh is a very direct player representative, right? Good, bad, and the ugly, man. He's gonna call it like he sees it. And that cuts both ways. You also know when one of Walsh's clients is unhappy, or he sees a better fit somewhere else, or it's just time for a change because certain media will be reporting on it, or Walsh himself will weigh into social media and say, well, here's what's going on. There's no gray area with Alan Walsh. So that's why when he tweets something that direct, he's not expecting to get blindsided by Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford. He's not. And he includes Adam Foote, the head coach, in that by saying the coaches are happy with him as well. I guess the one reason, look, you never box yourself in. I learned this from the best, and the best is Bob McKenzie. You always give yourself a bit of wiggle room. So in that sense, I would say that, to your point, like the majority of the lineup, the majority of the roster is more or less in play for the Vancouver Canucks. So as Alan is reporting on that, and we're talking about it in the moment, that's, I'm sure, accurate. How do you know what's going to unfold in the days ahead here? How do you know? Somebody walks in and says, here's an offer, man. Patrick, what do you think? Well, let me run it by Jimmy and I'll get back to you. Jimmy loves it. Okay, let's make a deal. Now I'm being ridiculous and how simplistic that sounds, but in the moment, I wouldn't question Alan Walsh, but there's still a lot of time between now and March 6th.
That sounds like a tweet that Alan's saying, don't bother bringing me a trade. We don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to look at what you've been offered by, that's what it sounds like to me.
Also fair. What about? And look, he is, again, fiercely protective of his guys, especially those with any trade protection. So this is Alan trying to nip something in the bud before it takes us to the Jake DeBrusk situation, right? And that's probably where it's at.
That's was my next question, Dregs. Great segue. He's also a no-move guy, although he does not have Alan Walsh as an agent. And, as I go around Vancouver, a lot of people say to me, do you not think DeBrusk is going to be okay with a trade? Because he didn't sign up for this last summer. Right. He thought he was joining a contender, and this is very much a team that's heading towards a rebuild. What are you hearing on DeBrusk?
Well, again, Vancouver's in a spot where they've got to take calls and listen to whatever interest there is. And as soon as you healthy scratch a player, a veteran player, a player who certainly wasn't expecting to be a healthy scratch, well, that gets the attention. And it gets the attention of all hockey clubs in the market, but it also obviously gets the media attention. So we start talking about it and wondering and speculating, and then that amps up the interest and the wonder of all the NHL clubs out there. Social media is a wonderful tool to get that message spread by, just mass hysteria. And it hasn't reached that point with Jake DeBrusk. But what I would tell you, we just talked about Alan Walsh and Phil Hronek. Rick Vallette is the agent for Jake DeBrusk. So in doing my due diligence, as I do several times over the course of the week, I reached out to him this morning. I'm like, look, I keep seeing Jake's name in media speculating and all of that. When I ask the Canucks, they just simply say, look, we're not going to talk about a specific player. We're getting calls on lots of players, more calls on some than others. So no real answer specific to Jake DeBrusk, but what are you hearing? Well, nobody from the Vancouver Canucks has had a single conversation with us about the possibility of trade, right? And so what are we talking about here? Is it just pure media speculation? Are teams calling? Is it a little bit of both? Yes. I'm answering my own questions here. Yes. But obviously, if Jake DeBrusk is a primary target and the Vancouver Canucks feel like there's a 2-3-4 team market, that there's a decent chance they could trade Jake DeBrusk in that contract, then they got to get the agent involved. They've got to get the player involved ASAP. And the fact that hasn't happened tells me it's more about guys like me and collectively us in the media just trying to put pieces of a puzzle together that aren't there yet.
Yeah. Teddy Bluger's such a great utility club on your last line, maybe even as much as your third line, but he hasn't played basically all season long. Can he play his way into a trade chip here for the management in Vancouver?
Potentially. Yeah, potentially. I speak from a coaching perspective now. They like the idea of an experienced player like that helping them in the area of need, but also again being a source of resource for the younger guys to be able to lean on as well. And I keep going back to Calgary, and Calgary and Vancouver are in a different place, but it's important to have players still within your organization, in the room, on the roster, on the ice, that are going to help you in every area. You got to stay competitive. You can't cut it right down to the wood. You can't. So with all due respect to Teddy Bluger, what are you getting for Teddy Bluger trade-wise?
Yeah, who knows how much?
The market will determine that. Like, I'm not saying that there's no value in that player. Of course there is. He's a good dude. And when healthy, he's an effective player. But you're talking about a draft pick on March 6th. Whatever that pick looks like will be determined by what else is available. And chances are it's probably a deal that goes down at 2:55 Eastern, just before the 3 o'clock trade deadline. So I would never slam the door and say no, but they're going to need help moving forward when all the bigger pieces are moved.
On this Rasmus Andersson trade, Dregs, first of all, gosh, I don't know why Calgary wouldn't have moved him last year. They weren't going anywhere last year. I thought last year he might have been worth something close to a Quinn Hughes package. He came out, had not as great a year. Is there intent to keep White Cloud, or is he trade fodder as well? And how did they do based on the people who were weighing in with you?
Well, I think they did okay, if not better than okay, because as we talked about earlier, you've got the first, you've got the conditional second in 28 that could be a first if the Golden Knights win a Stanley Cup. I don't know a whole lot about Abram Wiebe. I don't. He's a prospect defenseman at UND. In Zach Whitecloud, they get a big, strong, competitive, puck-moving defenseman. That can be a chip. Like, let's, again, just see how things play out here for the Calgary Flames. Beloved in the Vegas market. An absolute fan favorite was Zach Whitecloud. So I think, by and large, the Flames did okay. But it was curious how this all came together. Kelly McCrimmon didn't have a whole lot of assets to play with here. But I'm sure that he got in early, as he always does. He knows that Vegas is a destination of choice, both geographically and because, every player has a chance to win a Stanley Cup when you throw on that Vegas Golden Knights jersey. That's just real, right? He makes his pitch, and then he lets everyone else around the NHL exhaust themselves. It reminds me of what we just saw in Major League Baseball last week with Tucker signing with the Dodgers. It's like, Toronto, blow your brains out. You fill your boots. You make 10 offers. All these teams around Major League Baseball making their offers on Kyle Tucker, and the Dodgers are sitting there going, okay, are we done here? Are we done? We'll give you 4 years at $60 million. Does that work? Good? Okay. All right, that works for us. Everybody move on. Honestly, it's like, and it's not like McCrimmon and company don't work hard. They work incredibly hard, but they've built a program that players want to go to and they want to stay. And that's what's going to happen here. We all know what's going to happen. Rasmus Andersson, he put the Flames in a pickle yesterday morning, as Craig Conroy acknowledged, by saying, okay, I no longer am willing to sign with any team. I don't want to sign with anybody. So trade me as a rental, trade me to the best package you can get. I'll go wherever you need me to go, but I'm not signing. Well, at that point, then Conroy looked at the deals that he had, and the best deal that he had evidently was with the Vegas Golden Knights, and it got done that quickly.
You mentioned other sellers. Calgary could still sell more, although Murray Edwards tried to pour some cold water on that. And then there's another Rangers letter that has dropped since we last talked to you. Does that mean they're selling too? And what? I mean, we need to now open a Rangers library, perhaps, to stock all of the literary works of the front office.
Going in the National Archives.
Yes. I mean, they're just selling hope and trying to make sure that their season ticket base doesn't just collapse, right? That's clearly what they're doing there. And, it would have been encouraged by ownership. James Dolan and family probably unsettled by the chanting of Fire Drury and the booing at MSG and all of that. But when you look at the pieces that they have in play, they've got some interesting pieces. But most of those guys have, again, contract coverage. Artemi Panarin, just because Chris Drury and the Rangers put out a letter saying that we're no longer interested in extending him. So what? He's just going to say, okay, well, here are 8 teams that I'm willing to go to. No, he's got a full no move. So he's going to want to go to the Florida Panthers, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Dallas Stars. I mean, that's my wiggle room. And maybe that list is shorter than that. Otherwise, why would he do it? Why would he do it? He's going to have his pick of the litter as an unrestricted free agent. He's still a damn good hockey player. And I was told that even though they didn't go into the weeds of a negotiation earlier in the year, they were hoping that they were going to get him on a significant discount. And Paul Theophanos is the elusive Paul Theophanos. He's like Snuffleupagus. Like, you never see this guy as a player agent around the NHL. I think he basically said, yeah, you can go pound sand. We'll see how this plays out. But, beyond Panarin, name any player you want. There's lots of players there of interest, but we'll see how deep that knife is going to cut. They got to be careful because that fan base can be fickle there as well.
A lot of money in term, as you mentioned, on a lot of those players.
Yeah.
It'll be tough.
Yeah. And even strategically, come out and say we're not going to be offering him a contract. Why wouldn't you leave that possibility?
I don't know. Doesn't
You've
make
only
any
boxed
sense.
yourself in more arrangements.
No.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Great stuff, Dregs. Busy time of year. Look forward to next week already. Thank you, sir.
Okay, guys. Thank you.